Welcome to the Navigating Business Podcast, a podcast for agency owners that dives into the extensive world of advertising and marketing agencies. We talk about topics like finance, marketing, scaling, and much more. In this episode, we're getting into what it's like to build a remote team, team culture, and what it means to manage a team who's not in the same space as you are, as well as much more. We'll be getting into all that with Nicole Fallon-Peek, co-founder of Lightning Media Partners. Hey, Nicole.
Hey Nate, thank you so much for having me back on the podcast. Great to see you again.
Yeah, good seeing you. Yeah, I didn't mention Nicole is a second time guest. So thanks again, Nicole. And you'll have to go back and listen to our first episode as well, which was definitely a good listen. So, yeah, Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure, yeah. I am a former journalist and copy editor. I've been running my own digital creation agency for the last 4 years. My husband and I co-own the business together, and we've grown our team from a couple of freelancers to a team of 8 full and part-time employees and about 15 regular freelance copywriters.
That's pretty impressive and pretty amazing. I know we talked in our last episode about working with your spouse as well, which is a cool little piece of that too. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely go back and listen. It's super impressive. You guys have number one built an agency so quickly, but number two been able to do it alongside one another. So that's pretty cool. So tell us about Lightning Media Partners, what you guys do. Obviously, we know there's agencies that do pretty much everything. When you say you own an agency or work in agencies, it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, just because there's so many, right? So many different kinds. So tell us what you guys specialize in, what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Lighting Media Partners specializes in high volume, high quality editorial content for digital publishers. And we also work with small to mid sized businesses that want to increase their content publication schedule. Our team members have a lot of deep expertise in SEO and journalism, so we leverage that to provide well researched SEO friendly articles that are tailored to our clients' audience.
Yeah, very cool. Um, I am not someone who enjoys writing, so what you guys are doing is cool. I definitely see a huge need for it. Obviously, not only for smaller businesses like me, but especially I'm sure for much bigger businesses who are trying to pump out a lot more content and have it be well written and engaging and all that good stuff. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So, I mentioned in the intro that we're going to talk about having a remote team. You mentioned having a remote team, and obviously a very timely topic as COVID is still going on. It's definitely changed how we think about it in a lot of ways now that we're here in spring of 2022. But you guys have kind of built this team throughout peak COVID time, right? And
Mhm.
and the workplace has changed in a lot of ways, just with being a lot more open to flexibility, to remote work, to hybrid work schedules, all those things. So, yeah, tell us why you built out your team the way you did and your vision kind of behind what you wanted that to look like.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been fully remote since we started in 2018, and the pandemic really solidified our decision to always be a remote first agency. Because all of our services are delivered digitally, we really saw no reason to force anybody to come into a physical office or even restrict our talent pool to our local area. My husband and I live in New Jersey. We run our business out of New Jersey, and our first couple of employees were all based here. But as we decided to grow, we realized, there were just so many people out there who may be a better fit for the job. And, by expanding that, we were able to find employees all over the country. We now are spread across 6 different states. Our team really enjoys the flexible work from home schedule, and we have plenty of communication tools and protocols in place to make sure that we all stay connected.
Yeah, so I mean, you brought up a lot of things that are interesting. First of all, um, you expanded your talent pool hugely, which is pretty cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like you said, you're not just looking at people within 20 or 30 miles. You're looking at yeah, the entire country, or yeah, I don't know if internationally even at some point, but so that's pretty cool. You mentioned all the tools and things to stay in touch. It feels like there's so many software subscriptions and possibilities and tools out there. Um, how did you kind of whittle down which of those to choose? Because I know a lot of agency owners that I talk to have like huge tech stacks, right? They're like, I'm just going to get all the subscriptions and just kind of see what works. and just kind of deal with all those recurring monthly payments happening. I mean, I'm obviously seeing it from the bookkeeper perspective, where I'm like, what is happening with all these recurring charges? But obviously, it's a real problem where there's so many great tools, but how do you know which one to use? How did you kind of work through that? Was a lot of trial and error. What did that look like figuring out that tech stack?
Yeah, so I think um, my husband and I both took a lot of inspiration from our previous jobs where, we had coworkers in different offices across the country, and also had somewhat of a flexible work from home option. So we kind of borrowed a lot of things like Slack and Zoom
Mm-hmm.
from, just from our previous corporate experience. Um, we use Google Drive for like all of our
Mm.
email and documents and things like that. Um, I think our biggest uh, kind of tech stack question was how we were going to manage our projects for our various clients. We looked at a few different project management softwares, and we landed on Trello because it's a very user-friendly and visual Kanban style board where we can sort of
Mm.
create project cards and move them down the line as
Mm-hmm.
it goes through each stage of our editorial process. Um, so that one, we kind of got lucky. I think a client had recommended it to us, and we were like, "Oh, we really like this. We're
Yeah.
going to keep using it." So that was one of our earliest tech investments. And then from there, I think we kind of took the opposite approach of what some agency owners do. And instead of buying everything, we sort of have expanded only when we see a real need for it. Like when we get really tired of using a spreadsheet for this thing, we're like, oh, maybe we should look into a specific software solution for
Sure.
this. So that's how we've sort of expanded our
Yeah.
tech stack over time. There are definitely some things that we thought we were going to use that we don't use as often anymore. We uh, definitely need to kind of pare that back a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
just obviously for budget reasons. But for the most part, everything we have invested in, we do use on a regular basis. And it's
Yeah.
because of that kind of stepwise approach of only doing it when we need to.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed that you are still using all of your subscriptions, because it is hard to, just business needs change, and it's hard to
Sure.
keep up with all those subscriptions. It sounds like you guys have been pretty disciplined with that. I always like talking to clients about the tech stacks and saying, hey, maybe just check in on this every 3 to 6 months, kind of trim off those ones that maybe aren't being used anymore, because otherwise that, office supplies piece in your budget really can balloon out of shape with all those recurring subscriptions. They're pretty smart how they bill. But yeah,
For
that makes a
sure.
lot of sense. So going back to the kind of the hiring piece and all that, yeah, I mean, obviously you expanded your talent pool, had a lot more prospects and prospective employees to look at. But what was challenging about that process? Obviously you're not meeting someone in person to interview. That's all happening virtually. So yeah, what were the kind of the challenges you came up with that? And yeah, maybe there's pieces that were more enjoyable too. What was kind of your takeaway from that?
Yeah, so I mean, probably an obvious challenge would be just scheduling meetings across time zones. If we were interviewing somebody out on the West Coast, we're on the East Coast, and just trying to figure that out. But um, I honestly don't think that hiring virtually was as challenging as we thought it would be. Um, as you mentioned, we definitely had a wider applicant pool than we maybe would have if we had only put out a call for people in our state, say. When we were hiring for a position last year, we put out a posting on LinkedIn and we got 300 applicants in 48 hours. And most of them we were obviously, we were able to weed through them pretty
Sure.
quickly. LinkedIn has a lot of really great filtering tools to do auto rejection.
Mm-hmm.
So just anyone's looking to make their first hire, that's a good way to do it. Um, but once we kind of pared down the pool, it really felt very much like a regular hiring process. We kind of established a system. We did multiple rounds of video based interviews. We had some assessments that we had people fill out. We had sample assignments. And that really kind of gave us all the information we needed to make our decision. And honestly, in a way, I think it's a little more insightful to interview somebody via a video call because you can see better how they present themselves, obviously not only through, their physical appearance, but their background and lighting, things on their
Interesting.
wall, the personal touches that they have like out on their desk. You don't necessarily get that if they come into your office and you interview them there. um, I think people there's and yeah, I think people maybe have a little bit more of a comfort level when they're in their own environment on their home
Hmm.
turf interviewing for a job. So I think you're kind of getting people at like their optimal, in or presumably in their optimal state.
Yeah.
And if they don't seem to be comfortable, then that says something as well, and
Hmm.
maybe just something to inform your hiring decision.
Yeah. That's really interesting about kind of the background and what their setup looks like. Um, yeah, because the question I was going to ask before you said that was, do you feel like there's a disadvantage you have by not seeing someone in person, getting a feel for them? But it sounds like you guys have a really robust process that they're going through, right? It's not just like one Zoom video call to get a feel for them. It's like you said, assessments and examples and
Hmm.
assignments. So I'm sure that you know even if they're portraying themselves one day in one certain way, you're kind of seeing the full picture through all those meetings and through the different pieces. So yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. um, that's cool. Yeah, I love the background piece because I mean I do all my meetings virtual, so I think about the background. I mean my background is nothing
Mhm.
special, but I think about it. But most people who are applying for jobs may not be thinking about that, right? Because they're not, maybe this is their
Yeah.
first remote job or something like that. So um, I'm interested to hear stories, maybe horror stories that you have, and I won't ask you those now. I'll ask you those once we're done. But I'm curious. I'm curious if you've run across any fun pieces
Yeah.
there. But uh, we'll save that for off air. So so obviously once you've made the hire, the person has become part of your team now. Now you have to think about building a culture where a group of people are not permanently connected or seeing each other every day in the same way that we're used to with kind of your traditional office. So is it possible to build culture remotely? What does that look like for you guys? How have you done that? Yeah. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it is 100% possible to build a great company culture remotely, but the trick is you really have to be intentional about it. I think I've heard of a lot of agencies just kind of like throwing random perks out there, and we were kind of guilty of that in the beginning too. Um, just trying anything they could to get people engaged. But what we started doing is conducting a lot of employee surveys to really get a gauge on what people want to see from their remote work experience. Many of them are anonymous, so people can just really feel free to be
Hmm.
honest and not worry
Sure.
about, uh, it being tied back to them, which is a good thing because we're still a relatively small team and everybody kind of knows each other very well.
Yeah.
But out of those surveys, we have been able to develop initiatives like weekly professional development workshops. We do quarterly employee charity initiatives,
Hmm.
and team happy hours that are all conducted virtually. Um, and This is actually something we weren't able to do right away, for budgetary reasons, but last year we actually hosted our first in person employee retreat to get
Cool.
everybody together for a few days to meet in person for the first time. And everyone came out of that feeling like they had strengthened their relationships with
Hmm.
their coworkers and felt a lot more connected when they came home and hopped on their next Zoom call. Like they felt like they knew each other better.
Yeah.
So just kind of having those in-person touch points, if possible, are really helpful to strengthen a remote culture when you're not in the same place every
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, that's great. So some of those initiatives came from those surveys then, from what your employees kind of were thinking and saying, could we do this? Could we think about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to touch on one of those things very quickly, our quarterly employee charity initiatives is something we're very proud of. Every quarter, we have one of our employees. We have like kind of a rotation list. Choose a charitable initiative that they would like to support. Um, so Lightning Media Partners makes a monetary donation to that cause, and
Hmm.
then they the employee who chose it helps us come up with a virtual activity that we can do to support that cause. So we've done
Oh.
quite a few virtual 5K walks. We've made handmade cards for children at St. Jude's Children's
Hmm.
Hospital. We've run animal shelter supply drives that we've all like brought to our local animal shelters. So there's been a lot of cool things we've been able to
Yeah.
do, and you know, everyone takes a picture of themselves doing their thing and sends it
Yeah.
to a team Slack channel. So it's a way that we're all kind of we're doing the same thing separately, and it kind
Hmm.
of brings us together in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about that is that you're not just sending money to a charity, which I mean, don't get me wrong, that's still a great thing to do, but you're incorporating it so much more into the everyday life of the team and making it, so much more meaningful. How much more meaningful is it to, actually, yeah, spend an hour or a couple hours doing something for that charity compared to just sending them a quick check, right? So um,
Mhm.
that's really interesting. Yeah, that's great. Um, well, one other question before I go to my next question, but when you guys had your first in-person team event, what was that like? Like, what did it feel like walking in and seeing people in person for the first time?
So, the funniest thing that all of us said when we first met each other in person for the first time was, I didn't realize that's how tall you were. That's, that's like the number one thing we all said. But other than that, we really felt like just based on how much we communicated with each other through Zoom calls and daily Slack conversations, we really felt like we knew each other
Hmm.
already. And you know, it was our first time all being together as a team. You know, we had met some of our employees in person before. Our first hires were friends, a couple of friends and family that we had worked with in
Hmm.
the past. But as our team has expanded, it got harder and harder to, uh, you know, find time to go out and meet. We're in New Jersey. Our one of our recent hires lives in Missouri. Like there probably would have been no other natural opportunity for us to
Right.
meet with her
Right.
unless we held a specific event. So yeah, I think just having that experience was just so cool for all of us to be able to work together, meals together, feel like we were, in an office, and
Hmm.
then, you know, uh, going off and kind of doing our own things at
Yeah.
night. And, it did feel like we kind of captured that kind of missing piece,
Hmm.
like what people miss about being in an office
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Um, and we're very much looking forward to our second retreat, which we're planning for this fall. So um, I think everyone's very excited for that opportunity to come together again.
Yeah. That's exciting. You guys are gonna have to hire somebody in, Hawaii or maybe Florida. Say, hey, I know we're not hiring you because you live in Hawaii, but we'll do our retreats in your place. No, that's great though. I echo that as well. I mean, I work virtually as well, and in the times when I meet my clients in person for a meal or just to check in or do a meeting in person instead of over Zoom are some of my favorite meetings. Just because yeah, you get
Mhm.
you get that kind of back and forth that maybe is a little harder to get over Zoom. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you guys have been able to make time for that, and I'm sure that's energizing for sure to your team, like you said. So
Yeah.
yeah. So speaking of the team, it sounds like they're loving being part of the team, but can you give us more insight into how do they feel about being remote workers? Do they feel like there's things that they're missing? I'm sure maybe they're enjoying their schedules with the flexibility, but how does your team kind of view remote work and their thoughts on that?
Yeah, so our team absolutely loves the flexibility of remote work. And a lot of them have told us that the biggest perk for them is being able to build their workday around their personal life and not the other way around. I think it's very hard,
Yeah.
when you go into an office 9 to 5, you're there
Hmm.
um, from 9 to 5, and you've got to kind of either take time off or plan your days around, if you need to go run an errand or make an appointment. But our employees, because we're all remote, we can sort of take advantage of that, like middle of the day. Um, Maybe it's not as busy at the grocery store, or make a doctor's appointment, and then just kind of work when it's convenient. um, I think a lot of us do miss the social aspect of being in an office together, being able to go walk across to somebody's desk and brainstorm, or go out and grab a quick lunch with your coworker. um, And to kind of help recapture some of that, we've really encouraged our employees to go out and get out of their houses, go work at a coffee shop or a co-working space.
Mm,
That's a benefit program we're trying to develop, is to, um, maybe offer some kind of stipend or reimbursement if people join a co-working space,
sure.
which my husband and I have done, and we have absolutely loved. The we go in, maybe 3 or 4 days a month. But it is nice to just get out of the house and
Hmm.
be in an environment with other professionals all
Yeah.
doing their own thing. Um, I think it puts you in a different productivity mindset than if you're at home and there's dishes in the sink or a laundry basket in the corner of the
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
Um, Something else that we do that has really helped, from a remote culture perspective. A couple of months ago, we started hosting an open office hour together. My husband and I, when twice a week, we have just an open Zoom link, and we invite our employees, if they have questions about projects they're working on or even about the business in general, to just log on to that Zoom link and just ask us. Because I think a lot of our days are taken up by like client meetings and communications, and we're kind of all over the place. Um, but those office hours are really our dedicated time to just be present and be there for our employees, and give them an open forum to just talk to us. And sometimes it's easier to have a quick verbal conversation than to try to type out and
Yeah.
go back and forth that way. So that's
Hmm.
something that our team has really appreciated, and something that like we feel has helped us all get to know each other better.
Yeah. I feel like you summarized working from home perfectly there. You mentioned the beauty of the this schedule flexibility. You know, if you have an appointment, if you need to go do something, you can do it. But you also mentioned the productivity of being at home sometimes is a struggle. So the importance of getting
Mhm.
out and working in different places. So I love that you brought up both those, because whenever I think about working from home, those are literally the two things. I'm like, I love the flexibility, but the productivity can be hard sometimes. So it is good to move other places. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. So that's great. Um, so thinking about the remote setup for agencies, do you think this is a sustainable model? I mean, you guys have built it out, I think, really intentionally from what it sounds like, and put a lot of thought into it. But do you think this is a sustainable business model for agencies at large? And would you ever want to consider moving to having an office space or being semi in person or anything along those lines?
So I think it is absolutely a sustainable model. I think a lot of agencies were probably doing it before COVID. Certainly during and in the post-COVID
Mm-hmm.
world, I think more agencies are going to be intentional about remote work. I think there's just so much less overhead with a remote
Yeah.
work model. You don't have to worry about renting an office space or getting office furniture and, stocking the fridge with snacks and other things that,
Mm-hmm.
typically happen in an office. So you're saving money off the bat. Um, and in today's world, I think employees really do value the freedom to be able to work from anywhere. Um, and set their own schedule, and not have to worry about, when they're going to have to be expected to be in the office, um, or again, just kind of planning their day around
Mm-hmm.
an expected office time. uh, we don't necessarily think we'll ever move to an in-person or hybrid. It just really wouldn't be practical or worth it for us at this point with how spread out we are.
Right.
um, Maybe someday if we ended up hiring a lot of employees in one specific
Sure.
region, maybe we would. But I think at this point, the way we have been growing, remote work works for us,
Yeah.
and we are happy to stick with it. And um, I think it makes those kind of in-person touch points when we do have them much more special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, definitely. The overhead piece you brought up is obviously important. I mean, that's top of mind for me on the financial side is, rent costs and like you said, all the office supplies and
Mhm.
the furniture and the furnishings really adds up. It's a huge cost when a business starts up is having to cover all of that. So that's a great way to think about, yeah, starting a business. If you can start virtually, you're immediately cutting off a huge amount of costs that you would otherwise need to cover. So that's a great key point. And it's interesting too, thinking about a lot of kind of larger corporations are moving now to back to in person, right? They have been virtual, they're moving back, and there's a lot of pushback. Even with kind of the Silicon Valley giants, right? Like Apple and Google
Mhm.
and all those. I don't remember which one of those, maybe Google, but they were saying you need to come back, X amount of days out of the week, and there's a lot of pushback from employees. So it's kind of interesting, looking forward at where remote work is going. I think, like you said, for many smaller to medium sized agencies, maybe it's what's going to be the new way of work and the permanent way of working. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with corporations, whether some will completely kind of incorporate that, or whether they're going to feel, well, we've always done business in this way with this office with these perks, and we want to go back to that because we think it's beneficial. So, yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts there, but I think it'll be interesting to look over the next couple of years, kind of what happens both for small and large businesses, and kind of where remote work fits into that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know a lot of people who work for larger corporations who, um, were really unhappy when they were told they had to come back into
mm-hmm,
the office. And, I think that a lot of that is kind of driving, this so-called great resignation where everybody's leaving their jobs and trying to find something that's more conducive to the life that they got used to
right,
during this period of fully remote work.
mm-hmm,
Um, I think it's going to be something that even if larger corporations do have people come into the office, I think they're going to have to offer remote work at regular remote work as an option
yeah,
because I think it's gone too far to ever go back to forcing people to come in 5 days a
mm-hmm,
week um, for jobs that aren't necessary
right,
to be done in person.
yeah,
If things can be done digitally, then why not have people be able to work from anywhere? They're just as productive, if not more so, than if you made them do a 30-minute to an hour commute both ways. So
yeah,
I think, yeah, as you said, I think it'll be very interesting to see where it goes over the next couple of years
yeah,
with both small and large companies.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That's all interesting. Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think, like you said, I think people all of a sudden have kind of this idea in mind of, if I'm going to be forced to work 9 to 5 and be in this physical office space, maybe there's something else out there that I can choose instead to kind of get back to what I was used to during the pandemic. And I think what you said earlier too really resonated with me. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but I love the fact of remote work in that your life is no longer revolving around the office and around just doing your work, but instead your personal life has more, I think, importance during the workday. In the past, it was just, this is your work time, this is your personal time. Now those are mixed a lot more
Hmm.
together throughout the day, and I love that because obviously our personal lives are the ones that, in a lot of ways, are incorporating friends and families a lot more closely. So it's important that those have a priority too, even throughout the workday. And if that means scheduling work in kind of different times, being flexible with that, so be it. But um, that's maybe a little bit of a soapbox of mine. But speaking of soapboxes, I always like to ask people what their soapboxes are in their industries. We all have them. Those things that we're really passionate about. And you're allowed to have multiple soapboxes, by the way, and for those to change. So you don't have to pick one that has been around for a long time. It can be new and recent. But what's the soapbox for you right now in your industry or in business at large that you feel passionate about?
Yes, I love this question because I actually had to think about it quite a bit. But I think for me, the number one thing right now, and this kind of is all tying back to our conversation about what employees are looking for. Um, I think investing in your employees and their growth is just so important.
Hmm.
Even for small companies that don't think they can afford big benefits packages and bonuses like larger competitors, there are still like little ways to that you can make your team feel valued. We're again a 4-year old startup. We don't have a ton of big benefit offerings, but we do what we can. We've started exploring, different things, as we've made people full time. Like obviously there's kind of the expectation that you're going to provide health insurance and other kinds of benefits. So that's something that we've been really trying to stay on top of, like as our business grows, and just making sure that our employees know that they are valuable members of the team and that we're going to keep investing in their growth, whether it is through benefits or professional development opportunities or career pathing, things like that. I think people invest their time and energy back into your business when they know you care about them as workers and as individual people and human beings. Um, I think just demonstrating that it sounds very simple, and it's not necessarily something that is just you don't necessarily just throw money at it. I think you have to
Yeah.
both, offer things to people, but you also have to talk about it and communicate
Hmm.
it and let them know it. Even just, if somebody pulled a really late night and they got something done, they did something amazing, just sending them a little handwritten thank you note and a
Hmm.
DoorDash gift card. Hey, dinner's on me
Yeah.
because you worked really hard on this project. That we try to do little things like that, and send people little gifts for their birthdays and work anniversaries.
Hmm.
It's a relatively small investment that I think has a big impact. And that's the thing that I have become most passionate about as an employer, and especially a remote employer. Um, you know, just finding ways to make people feel that even when you don't have a lot of face time with them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think most employers right now are thinking about that in a general sense. They're thinking about retention, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
employees feel that they have a lot more independence than they do about where to work and how long to stay at a career. So I think a lot of employers are struggling with how do we keep the people that we have as well as hiring new people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, sometimes the first option that's always thought of, like you said, is like, how can we offer more bonuses or big retirement or health packages? And I don't think that's wrong necessarily, but I don't know if that's always the right choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley started it with like, let's have the ping pong tables and the happy hours in person, and we have a beer keg and all these things. And I don't know if that's necessarily the right option either. I think both those are good, but what you're saying and what I'm hearing from you is that number one, you need to be getting feedback from your employees about what they're looking for, and then you need to listen to that and use that with intentionality to kind of bring in benefits that, yeah, maybe are not going to be a huge cost to the business, or even, yeah, even like a huge recurring cost throughout the year, but maybe just going to be some time that you spend to be intentional to your employees to realize, hey, I recognize that you spent extra time or that you did this. So um, I really appreciate the intentionality that I'm hearing from you. And I think that's so important in the business world, because I think oftentimes it's easy for businesses just to try to like automate the retention. Like, we'll just automate you by throwing more bonuses at you or more benefits. But it's like people want kind of that personal touch and that connection, and to feel like they're actually known at their workplace, right? So it seems like you guys are providing that. I think that's really cool, and something that, yeah, I think more businesses definitely could replicate to try to, I mean, yes, increase retention, but also just make sure their employees are cared for and well taken care of too. So that's super cool. Yeah, you guys sound like you're doing some really cool things.
Thank you. No, we try.
You're like, I did just say I was passionate about that, so yes, we are.
Thank
uh,
you.
well, Nicole, good stuff. I think any business that is considering going remote or having a hybrid team could learn a lot of things from this conversation. So we'll make sure to yeah, put it out into the web, and hopefully many business owners can learn about this. But I know you're on LinkedIn. Where's the best place to find you and your team?
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn for sure. Or lightningmediapartners.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as well. Um, and yeah, we look forward to seeing this podcast and go live, and any connections we might be able to make there, and uh, opportunities to continue the conversation. I love talking about this stuff. I love, um, you know, just talking to any employer who's considering a remote work model or finding ways to improve the remote team,
Hmm.
I'm happy to chat with anybody about that.
Yeah, good to know. So for all your content and remote work needs, go find Nicole. Maybe there's a cool little side business there for you, Nicole. Little consulting, little employee retention consulting. I don't know. I know you don't have much going on. You're just running a very fast growing agency. So no. So thanks again, Nicole. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, listen to Nicole's previous episode as well in the Navigating Business podcast. Make sure to go check that out. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So Nicole, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Nate. Really
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners. We'll see you next time.